Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much for joining me here on Wave Now's Ask the Doc. I'm Myra and sorry. So, you may not know this, but September is Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. And I was on the American Cancer Society's website before getting on here and reading the statistics on their website just kind of broke my heart. And it was so alarming. Almost 10,000 children across the US are diagnosed with cancer. And I can speak to this. I have a niece who was diagnosed with leukemia, very young age, and it was absolutely devastating. But she is a champion and she is doing great now. But that's why I'm really glad that we're talking about this today. Joining me now with Norton Children's Cancer Institute is nurse practitioner Erica Shell, who is also very passionate about talking about childhood cancer and what folks should know about this. And, if viewers are joining us, we all probably have, Erica, someone in our lives who's been impacted by cancer. When it comes to children, though, it's even more heartbreaking.
It really is. And first, I want to say thank you so much for giving us the time to come share the stories that unfortunately many children in our area are faced with and affecting their families alike. Um, and sharing their story just brings so much joy to us. Awareness is something that we definitely want to be able to provide to our community. And it is very much a difficult journey for many children and families in our area. Um, so for me specifically, understanding and being able to share with others the facts about childhood cancer and how things are different for children than adults is something that I definitely want to be able to do. And your question asking about what is the journey like for many of our children, and that is something that is very unique for every child and every family. Um, to say the least, it's life shattering. It's definitely changing their lives and those around them. We have to temporarily deprive them of things that comprise a normal childhood. Their days are filled with daily medications, chemotherapy, doctor's appointments, fear of germs. Who is going to bring something to them that could potentially uh, make them sick and can um, make them have to stay in the hospital longer. Unfortunately, we have to deprive them of opportunities to spend summers at the lake, which I know many people in the Kentuckiana area love to do across the summer. Um, but they're sick, and we really need to do what we can to keep them safe. Um, but at the end of the day, if there's one thing that these children have taught me, it's resilience. The kids are they're battling the hardest battle that I hope they ever have to have in their life, and what comes with that is they still want to be children. They want to be healthy. They want to go play with friends. They want to laugh and joke and play. And that's something that brings me joy during this process.
And you think about us as adults processing cancer, which is hard enough, but trying to see a child process it. And as you mentioned, Erica, you're almost that little boy or girl is in a bubble for their safety. And it's really hard to kind of explain and help them understand, well, life is changing now for you, hopefully just temporarily as we get through this. But, there are so many, actually, childhood cancer versus adult cancer very different. Sometimes with adult cancer comes on because, say, smoking or environmental factors. With children, not so much the case.
Yeah, absolutely. And the biggest takeaway here is that children get different types of cancer than adults. We're very familiar with adult cancers, like you mentioned, lung cancer, breast cancer, colon cancer. These types of cancers are very, very rare in children. And in adults, unfortunately, they do have links to lifestyle choices, environmental risk factors, and so forth. But for children, that's not the case. We unfortunately have not identified the cause of majority of those childhood cancers. Um, So, the most common childhood cancers that we see would be leukemia, blood cancers, brain tumors, and other nervous system tumors and lymphomas. And unfortunately, we haven't been able to identify the main cause of these childhood cancers.
So a lot of folks are wondering, so is some of this genetics? Do we know what causes some of this?
Yeah, absolutely. We're making strides in areas of genomes, the genetic makeup of certain types of cancers and tumors. But unfortunately, cancers have different genetics, and not every
You brought up
cancer
the
tells us the same
spider, is that
story.
right? Yes, I was sure.
So what we're looking for is we've come a long way in identifying cancer predisposition syndrome. So if we have the ability to look ahead and understand a patient's family history, looking back at parents, grandparents, etc., even siblings, we may be able to help identify tumors or cancers early on in their disease process and treat them early. Earlier treatment can usually lead to better outcomes and better success for patients.
And we talked about the types of cancers that impact children, more leukemia, brain tumors, lymphoma. As I mentioned earlier, in when we got started, my niece was diagnosed with leukemia, and it does really have a ripple effect on the family. It's just a gut punch that is no parent expects or wants. How do you know something's not right with my child?
And the scary and alarming part for many childhood cancers is that they can be masked by normal childhood disease, bumps, scrapes, bruises, um, illness, fevers. The symptoms oftentimes can be very vague, leading people to follow up with their pediatricians. Things that we look for specifically speaking for those leukemias are excessive bruising, bruises that we can't explain, the normal bumps and bruises that our kids get when they're learning how to walk or they're active toddlers jumping off of the playground. But we're looking more for bruises that are covering the entire body or excessive. We're looking for fevers with no other symptoms, high fevers that are coming very frequently and unexplained. Little pinpoint rashes on the body. We call those petechiae and are usually caused by, they can have a number of causes. They're not only isolated to leukemias, but if there's ever a concern, we do encourage patients and families to speak up and just say something doesn't feel right, and speak to their pediatrician and those around them to help identify any cause.
I think we as parents, we kind of know our children better than anyone else, right? So you know when your little boy or little girl is just not themselves. Something is off. Go with your gut, and no harm in talking to your child's doctor and pressing those feelings.
Absolutely. I cannot echo that enough. As a newer mom myself, I find that a lot of parts about being a parent is scary, and it takes a village, and you really have to have that confidence to speak up and say, like you mentioned, I know my child and something just does not feel right. I always tell our patients and families, speak up. You know your child the best. We can only better understand them when you speak up for them and help us understand.
So, do we know, are boys or girls more affected? Is there a certain age that maybe uh, things like cancer have shown to be diagnosed more with children?
Again, speaking to the unique nature of childhood cancers, is there are dozens of different types of cancer, each with their own subtypes, which leads us to hundreds of different types. So unfortunately, each cancer and subtype speak to their own risk factor affecting boys, girls, different ethnicities. Um, but generically speaking, when we think of childhood cancer, we can see the average age of diagnosis around school age children, with the median being about 8 years of age.
And the one thing I was reading, Erica, that how advanced we've come, of course, in the world of medicine, and when it comes to treatment, we have progressed greatly. For most people, of course, we can't. We can't just say this is for every child who gets diagnosed with cancer, but sometimes the outcome can be okay.
Mhm. Absolutely. We have made strides over the last few decades. We're seeing improved survival rates across the board, whether that's from early detection, new technologies, new treatment modalities. The list really could go on. If we look as close back as the 1980s, we only had about 10 drug options or treatment options for these children. And we have come so far since then. We're starting to develop immunotherapy. So, how are we going to use the child's own immune system to attack their cancer? We're still using those more harsh traditional chemotherapy agents, but we are relying and finding more use for these immunotherapy treatment options, which we can engineer specifically for the children's type of cancer.
And we hope that no parent has to go through this, Erica, but um, the positive that we can look is the amazing resources that Norton Children's offers to our community. We have state of the art technology, the best doctors, health practitioners, everything right here in our backyard to help families.
Absolutely. I adore working with our team. I've been involved for about 10 years now in different avenues, and it's just been amazing to watch how far we've come again with treatment options, screening opportunities, just really the collaboration across the board. But our offerings don't just end at technology and medication. Of course, those are some of the most important parts of a patient's journey during this horrific time. But something else that our Norton Children's Cancer Institute has to offer are the collaborative approach. We rely so heavily on our supportive care therapies. We allow the children to express themselves through music and art therapies. We have a massage therapist that comes to see our patients and families. Again, like we spoke before, there's no end to this ripple effect. So not only is the patient affected, but the siblings,
Mhm.
the parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins. Everybody is just so affected by this treatment. So, how can we bring everyone together to provide that treatment and make everyday experiences special for them?
Absolutely.
We rely heavily on our child life specialists. Something so important to me is how do we make this less traumatic? Um, there's no telling how scary walking through our doors are. We make children do things that they don't want to do because unfortunately we have to. And so we rely on those child life specialists to make these experiences less traumatic. If it's less traumatic for the patient, it's less traumatic for the family, and that's worth its weight in gold.
Absolutely. So, one thing I found a little bit concerning, Erica, is that some pediatric cancers, they're actually on the rise, especially in Kentucky. Which cancers are those and why?
Unfortunately, there's no clear answer to that question, and I know a lot of patient or families out there want to know how and why. When we look at the numbers across the nation, we can't help but wonder: are these because we have better detection? Are we able to detect these brain tumors earlier where we hadn't in the past? Are we able to find these leukemias before disease has progressed extensively? Again, for solid tumors. Unfortunately, I don't think that I can clearly speak to that because we require a lot of information from the nation itself. Because realistically, childhood cancer is rare. it's not rare when it's your child and you want those answers. But it does take a collaborative effort from everyone to share that information so we can compare.
Do we know which cancers are on the rise in Kentucky? Is it just all of them, or what do we know?
What do we know here is that we are seeing an increase in some types of brain tumors, and then we are also seeing some types of leukemias as well.
Okay. So, this is why we're talking about this. Not just, I mean, it is September, and this is the time, of course, with it being Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. We want to honor and honor children and the survivors affected by this. As you've mentioned, it takes a village, not just the hospital staff, but family. You know, when you're going through this and you're a parent, for your coworkers, for your neighbors, it takes everybody's support because this is truly harder, I think, on children than it is adults because being a child is all they know, right? And it's hard to take them out of anything they feel is normal.
Mhm. And I think that speaks to the resilience that these children have. When I see them at the hospital and, on their good days, of course, because like everybody, they have their bad days when they're undergoing chemotherapy and just don't feel good. But when they are still in the hospital and they're having those good days, they want to play, never mind the fact that they have this IV pole with their medications on it and they're expected to run slowly or not ride their bicycle or not jump off things. They tend to have that mind that says, I still want to play, I still want to have fun. And those are the moments where you can kind of sit back and rejuvenate and just enjoy the time that they're feeling as good as they are.
Is there any new exciting research that could help treat? I mean, we all have the dream of curing cancer, but is there anything on the horizon?
Yeah, I think one of the most upcoming treatments that we are using currently at Norton Children's Cancer Institute is CAR T therapy, and that is for B cell leukemias. Again, it's not designed specifically that we can use it as a frontline defense at this moment, unfortunately, but we get to take parts of these children's immune systems, send them off to an amazing facility that can engineer them and change them so we can give them back to the patient and it attacks their cancer.
That's amazing. That's coming. I mean,
That's what we're looking for in future drug development or treatment development is how are we going to lessen these harsh side effects of chemotherapy. The one of the other interesting things about childhood cancers is they tend to be more aggressive than adult cancers, so their treatment is more aggressive, meaning they have more aggressive late effects, and we end up monitoring these children for the rest of their lives. If they're diagnosed at age 3 years, we still follow them and see them into adulthood so we can understand the effects of their treatment.
if you are a child diagnosed with cancer, is the likelihood, if you get through it, for you to be impacted as an adult? Do we know that?
Yes, unfortunately, the plus side is that if we look at all childhood cancers, we're visualizing about an 85% success rate, which is amazing, especially compared to where we were a decade or two ago. But unfortunately, because of the harsh treatment and those harsh effects, approximately 2/3 of all children will have some type of secondary effect from their chemotherapy. Unfortunately, in some instances, that means a cancer later on in life. That could be heart damage, other organ damage, diabetes, osteoporosis. Unfortunately, the list goes on. But again, at Norton Children's Cancer Institute, we have a program dedicated to monitoring children for the long-term effects of their chemotherapy.
Erica, I think I could talk to you all day about this as a parent. You know, I think that we can't talk enough about this, educating ourselves about this. For those of you who do want more information, in this link, I've provided you a link to nortonchildrens.com/cancer. That's where you can go for more information. Erica, my last question for you is, what do you want parents in the community to know?
What I want our community to know is that our children deserve more. We can talk all day about how rare childhood cancer is, but again, it's not rare when it's you or your child affected. Unfortunately, only 4% of our national cancer research budget is allotted to children. And when we look at curing childhood cancer, we look at giving them 70 years of their life back in a lot of instances. When we compare the age of diagnosis to the average individual's lifespan. So when we give them back a lifetime, that's a lifetime of learning, going on in school, getting married, having families of their own, just dreaming overall. So if there's one thing that I can ask our community, it's to give. Whether we give back in our time, whether we can give through donations, whether we talk to legislators and ask for more, demand more, so we can continue to give back lifetimes to these children.
That child who survives may be the next world-renowned scientist that cures cancer. That's how we have to look at our children, that they are worth the investment. They are worth finding a cure. They're worth people coming together for.
Yes.
Erica,
They're worth their weight in gold.
absolutely. Erica, thank you so much for all that you do for kids in our community and along with your fellow coworkers at Norton Children's, because you cannot get a bigger, you deserve all the thanks and the praise for all the work that you do. So big thank you to you.
Thank you. And thank you for letting us come on and share the passion that we have. And we'll continue to help these kids dream. And hopefully we see a cure in our lifetime.
Absolutely. All right. I'm Myra Ansari for Ask the Doc with Erica Schell from Norton Children's Cancer Institute. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Hope you have a good rest of your day.